So, the official Halloween game just got announced, and I should be over the moon. Michael Myers finally getting his own dedicated horror title. That's a dream, right? But instead of feeling like I'm about to get stalked by the Shape himself, I'm terrified of something much worse: IllFonic and Gun Interactive. Yeah, those guys. Gun's the studio that gave us the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a game that had so much potential, but got mismanaged harder than a McDonald's ice cream machine. And IllFonic, well, they've been pretty busy speedrunning through every iconic license like Predator Hunting Grounds, Ghostbusters, and Killer Clowns from Outer Space, all of which launched with hype and then face planted into the content graveyard. But here's the kicker: when these two worked together last time, we got Friday the 13th, one of the best asymmetrical horror games ever made. The difference: Gun was leading, IllFonic was supporting. This time IllFonic's in the driver's seat and Gun's just along for the ride. So yeah, forgive me if I'm not busting out the party hats just yet, and I'm not saying the other way around would have been any better. Now look, I'll give credit where it's due. These games are really fun. Honestly, I've had more fun in IllFonic's flops than in Dead by Daylight half of the time. But fun doesn't mean anything if your game collapses faster than Chandler Riggs in a 240p stream from a billion-dollar company. And that's been the story over and over again. So how do we make sure Halloween doesn't meet the same fate? Easy. We actually hold these devs accountable before the game launches, instead of showering them with blind faith like we did with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's a blueprint out there built on the graves of failed titles, and if this game wants to have any shot, we need to be critical now, not after release. So I've scoured every article, every interview, every snippet of information about the Halloween game, and today I want to break down the potential red flags that could lead to disaster if the devs aren't careful. And remember, I said potential. I'm not trying to make any kind of factual statement, so just relax a little bit and come along for the ride, huh? So let's talk about the game itself. What is it? The game has both single player and multiplayer, and you can even play it offline with bots, the multiplayer. In single player, you control Michael Myers in what the devs call a cinematic experience. Realistically though, it sounds more like a challenge mode than a full-blown campaign, so don't expect any kind of deep story like in the upcoming Hellraiser game. Think more along the lines of like a sandbox killing spree type of game, sort of like Hitman but with Myers instead. Now multiplayer on the other hand is where things get interesting and obviously a bit concerning. It's a 1v4 setup just like Dead by Daylight, and honestly, that worries me. In smaller survivor counts, those survivors need to be sturdy, tankier, otherwise the match ends too fast. But the trade-off is that it also makes the killer less threatening and the tension drops. We've seen this balancing problem tank plenty of other asym horror titles. That said, Halloween does have a bit of a twist here. Survivors won't just be sitting on generators. Instead, they'll be moving through Haddonfield, saving NPCs who can help against Myers. That's at least a fresh spin, and it could work if executed well. It also means Myers is going to be doing a lot of killing, which is very on brand. So 1v4 is the first red flag, but let's move on to the other red flags, right? And this one is the biggest one for me. There's a screenshot that shows a survivor holding a baseball bat, and this is potentially disastrous. If survivors can fight Myers directly, even just a quick stun, that kills all the tension. It gives survivors a get out of jail free card, and suddenly Michael Myers, the boogeyman, feels less like the Shape and more like a piñata. For example, even if it's something like a 3-second stun to Myers and the bat breaks forever, having that get out of jail free card, it just removes all the tension. All of the horror is gone. As a survivor, you know you are literally indestructible while you have an item like that, which just removes all of the fear until that item is gone. And it's so bad for the game. And it's so bad for both sides, even if the survivor players don't always realize it. But you play this game to get a horror experience. It's what makes Survivor fun. And if you have something like that in the game, it can make you feel powerful, but it ultimately at the same time undermines the game itself. It allows you as the player to run free, throw caution to the wind, etc. And for the person who's playing Myers, they lose all agency because they basically have to let you smack them in the face before the game can actually begin. And that's just so lame. Now, I reiterate, of course, this is all speculation. We do not know if the survivors can use the bats themselves. They might only be able to give them to NPCs, but knowing the track record of the devs, I'm assuming you're going to be able to attack Myers, and that would be disastrous for all the reasons I just said. It would lead to the inevitable loop of Myers getting bullied by better survivor players, which whether people realize it or not, it just does ruin the game for both sides, and it will speedrun the game's death. And before you say, wait, Joy, why don't you calm down? Friday the 13th had weapons and it didn't cause any issues. Well, that's simply just not true. In fact, weapons in Friday nearly killed the game before the lawsuit did because almost nobody wanted to play Jason anymore. The devs had to add in an entire new rage mechanic to lower the impact of weapons, and they were still tanking the experience even after. Again, we saw this happen in TCM and Killer Clowns as well. We can't forget the infamous Texas Grapple Simulator situation that occurred. So I really want to reiterate for the devs, if you're allowing the survivors to fight Myers, you are playing with fire, and you really need to consider what you're doing, because there is almost nothing that can kill the game faster from a design standpoint than implementing a flawed fighting mechanic. There's just a million things that can go wrong, and no matter how rare the items are or how random their spawns are, players will figure it out. They do every time. And don't get me wrong, combat can of course work in certain asymmetrical games. Evil Dead the game or Evolved are great examples of that, but in a game where there's a singular horror entity, you really don't want to take any presence away from that. The IP should be respected immensely, unless IllFonic limits combat to something like very rare, like maybe a Dr. Loomis, Tommy Jarvis mechanic. This will sink the game. But let's move on to red flag number 3. The NPCs. This screenshot of a cop chasing Myers, it looks rough. The animations were stiff, robotic, like early Saints Row NPC. And if the NPCs are a core part of the gameplay, they need to feel believable and not like Rizbot. Otherwise, the immersion is gone before it even starts. And again, I don't want this video to sound like a doom and gloom. I'm genuinely hyped for this game, but Halloween faces a steeper hill than Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The IP is way more limited, which means the gameplay loop needs to be rock solid. If it is, maybe we could even get original killers or more licensed Halloween content down the road. But what I'm really hoping for is an early alpha test. It can be a private one. Let the community stress test it, find the pain points, and give feedback before competitive players tear it apart post-launch, which they always do. That could be the difference between this game thriving or dying on arrival, and that launch is everything. So what do you think? Are you going to give Halloween the game a shot? Have you noticed any red flags I didn't cover? Drop your thoughts below, and as always, thanks so much for watching, and have a good one.